Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Alison. Thank you, Zina. Thanks for organizing the program, and thanks to the fellow panelists and everybody who's tuned up to listen. Okay, I'm gonna just kind of like talk a little bit about um, the destructive impact of climate change, environmental degradation. I want to see this as a monster. And I want to see how our little acts in terms of trying to change this, in my opinion, is just stroking the underbelly of the beast. But the beast is so powerful that sometimes you ask whether what we're doing is going to significantly and radically kind of like change what we're doing. But if we don't do it, what's the other alternative? So I will talk a little bit about uh, the pedagogic approach that I've used in my practice. And I will then talk about a few examples that I can give. Just to give you context, so I was born in the Gambia, in West Africa, and I lived the first half of my life there. And then the second half of my life so far, I've lived here in the UK. So, but I also see myself as a scholar activist in that I want to be located within academia. And I also am interested in the production of knowledge, the configuration of knowledge, the sanctification of knowledge, how ways of knowing and being are actually looked at. But I'm also interested in the operationalization of knowledge. When all the theory is done and dusted, what does it mean in people's everyday lives? So that's why I try to straddle within these two tensions of one being located in academia and two being located in the real world. This is about bringing about change. So I just want to show you something. This was something that happened on the 18th of June, 2018, in a village called Faraba Banta in the Gambia. And in this picture, you can see that some people, especially young people, are protesting because in their farmlands, rice lands, there was a new company that came in there to do some sand mining. And the villagers understood the impact of sand mining. So there were other issues linked to this, but the main issue was that there was going to be degradation as a result of the sand mining. And the military or the paramilitary force came in to ensure that there was peace, and there was tear gas and live rounds were used, and as a result, two people died. So it was about citizens standing up to what we believe was wrong in terms of private capital. It's a typical example about uh, uh, companies that actually exploit the earth and its resources, and those who stand to resist. But where is the power imbalance in all of that? So consequently, before this I was looking at it, but this gave me a greater opportunity to actually look at one, the causes of the impact of sand mining, on the environment, on the Gambia. You look at all the other things that are happening. I mean, if you look at the study of, for example, Sunk and others, just to look at the figures, they argue that, if they project that there will be at some point a 1 meter rise in the sea level, and this will result 50% of the capital being drowned, 61% of current mangroves being drowned, 33% of the swamps, 20% of current lowland rice growing areas. So you could see also it will result in the salinization, of shallow coastal areas, which will have an impact on erosion. You talk about what 80 kilometers of the coastal road now being susceptible to erosion because of all of these things. Because when you go to the beach and some of these areas, you mine the sand, it has an impact on the environment. So this was one of the issues that we were facing. And I will tell you some of the solutions that we came up with in a minute. But I want to talk about a particular approach in terms of global youth work. I'm a big proponent of this pedagogic approach, which is about two things. One is about provoking consciousness, and two is about taking action. If people are aware, because raising awareness is different from provoking consciousness. Raising awareness is bringing the facts to somebody's attention, but provoking consciousness is going deeper than that and beyond that. Paulo Freire in his classic work talks about us being seduced by the defective logic of the system. And then provoking consciousness is going beyond awareness, is about getting your consciousness provoked. And when you get a provoked consciousness, hopefully it will lead to critical consciousness. and then it will lead to action, hopefully, at the personal, local, national, and global levels. And then sometimes this can be dormant as well. But in global youth work, it's about understanding the impact of globalization, because there are five phases in my argument. It's got the environmental, the economic, the political, the cultural, and the technological phases of globalization. So we can look at how these interact to produce something different. So when we talk about the impact of the global on the local, how do we develop acts of resistance? How do we develop provoke consciousness? And how do we take action? And for the past 20 years, I've been working a lot around this methodology. And if you look at, some of you might have a chance to look at my book called Provoking Consciousness and Taking Action, where I laid out to these arguments, some of these arguments. I promised Zina that I will try and stick to 10 minutes, even though she tried to stick me to last, so that everybody will start walking away before when I start opening my mouth and talking too much. But I mean, if you want to follow that, please go ahead and look at that. The other bit is we do is like, I teach at the Montfort University. We have been teaching for the past 16, 17 years. But I also run a group called Global Hands, which is a social enterprise in the UK and a charity in the Gambia. And one of the things we did is develop a development hub, which is about a disruptive, innovative hub in the Gambia. And it is called the Mandua Development Hub, where we cook a lot of our acts of resistance. So we've got a library, it's totally green in that we run solar. It's off grid, so we run it on solar energy, and there's a borehole there. And we try to develop acts and things that will actually kind of like make the environment better for all of us. And I just want to share simple things that we've done. For example, we've collaborated with Nissan, and then we have actually developed Africa's first solar power taxi service. If you look at the pollution level in the Gambia, just to look at the figures, I think the recommended micrograms per cubic meter of air is actually 10 for maximum, or in the Gambia, on average, is 34. So there is a lot of pollution, around the area. In addition to that, a significant amount of the GDP is actually spent spent on importing fuel. A significant amount of it I'm talking about. So we wanted to test the proof of principle. And we just wrote a paper that came out a couple of weeks ago. And I think taxi drivers can actually gain 240% more profit by using the electric vehicles than the normal vehicles. So there's been a case that's been made. We wanted to just be disruptive and kind of like, and be able to test, because a lot of the time you see very old rickety cars, and some of the taxis, they've done over 300,000 miles, and the pollution is very, very, very bad, because the pollution is caused a lot by agricultural industry, by vehicle emissions, and by waste burning. So we wanted to look at how we can take out one of those in terms of the vehicles. And that's why we started this project. And it has been running as Africa's first solar power taxi service that totally runs on solar energy. That's one example we've done just to be disruptive. The other example we've done is we've built a compressed earth brick machine, because I told you about the sand mining that led to that problem in Farababanta, because people need to build, and sand from the beaches and from the quarries are the easiest way, but we actually wreak havoc on the environment. So if you want to buy an Orum 3000, it'll cost you about 3,000, 4,000 pounds. But that would allow you to use like compressed earth. So under normal circumstances, a bag of cement will give you about 30 bricks, 35 bricks. If you use the compressed earth brick machine, you could actually get about maybe 120 bricks from the machine. And then it also means that you don't have to put much sand. You can do it without sand, or instead of doing maybe 5 wheelbarrows of sand, you only put 1 wheelbarrow of sand. So you could use the compressed earth brick technology. And if you see the building behind it, that's also made from compressed earth technology. But if you want the machine, it costs about 3,000 to 4,000 pounds. So I was able to work with the engineers, the local engineers, and some of our people here, and we built this compressed earth brick machine for about $300, $400. But there was a second version, because this one was cheaper. The second version was automated, and was supposed to run on solar energy as well. But there was one component that was missing that stopped us from being able to develop it and also mass produce it. So, but these are the kinds of disruptive ways in which we want to challenge, one, provoke consciousness to show people what's possible, but to take action as well. The other bit that we did actually was to develop solar dryers. I mean, in the Gambia, it is estimated that during the mango season, up to about 60% of some mangoes would actually be destroyed because they don't have the facilities to preserve it or to conserve it, and therefore it gets. But if you use the solar dryers, you can dry the mango, and it will have a massive impact on the environment, on the production of food, of vitamin E, and all of these other things. So what I've just tried to show you within these three examples is just to look at how we don't really talk about climate change in my view, but we take small actions, however small they are, to engender them as acts of resistance. And it might just be that by doing these little acts of resistance, we're just stroking or tickling the underbelly of the beast of or the monster of climate change. But I think being kind of like being paralyzed, and not being able to even live because of the magnitude of that problem is not an option. So what are the simple acts that we can take, that we can do, to make a change? And these are my three little offerings in terms of the compressed air big machine, in terms of the electric Africa's first solar power taxi service, and also in terms of the solar dryers. So yes, I promise Zina, that I will not go beyond 10 minutes. So I hope I promise. But if there are questions, I'm happy to continue this conversation.